All right, so we are live. My name is Jesse Hildebrand, and this is the second of the Conservation Stories Canada interviews, where I'm going to be going coast to coast to feature conservation stories across Canada, featuring some of the wildest places, species, and the people working tirelessly to protect them. So I wanted to give a huge thanks to Peter Soroye for joining me today. Peter, thanks for being here. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure chatting with you, and I'm super excited today to have a good conversation.
Well, man, you are way, way more popular than I will ever be. So a lot of people know about the work you're doing already. But for my audience, could you explain a little bit about what you're doing right now and the work that you're up to?
For sure. So I'm a PhD student at the University of Ottawa. I consider myself a conservation biologist, and I take a macroecological perspective. But basically, I look at how climate change and land use change or habitat loss might be causing extinctions in different groups of animals. Most often, I focus on bumblebees and butterflies, and so we had a lot of media attention around a paper in 2020 trying to predict extinctions in bumblebees from climate change, and we found really strong impacts of climate change over the last 50 years on bumblebees, and we're able to predict this across North America and Europe. So that's a lot of what I do. I dabble in a lot of other groups of species as well, but that's the core of the work that I focus on.
Which, by the way, so I mean, you got published in Science as a PhD student, which is not unheard of, but it's basically unheard of. So Peter is insanely smart, up to some really, really cool stuff. Why bumblebees and pollinators? What prompted the interest in you? Is this something that you were always keen on, or when you became a PhD student, you got driven into, or what's the deal?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I honestly stumbled into the world of bumblebees and butterflies pretty much 100% by accident. When I started out my studies in undergrad, doing my honors project, kind of the cap project of my undergrad, I was more interested in vertebrates and kind of big charismatic animals. That was what really got me jazzed up. And then I started work in this lab in macroecology about predicting extinctions, and we worked with butterflies there.
Yeah.
And butterflies are great for this type of work because they're beautiful, and so that's awesome. But more importantly, because they're beautiful, people have been looking at them and looking for them for a really long time. And so there's this long history of information for things like butterflies that we can use as like a time machine to look at, over the past decades, where have they been? Where are they going? Where are they going extinct? Where are they moving into new areas? And so they're an excellent kind of group of species in that regard, as well as being like really important pollinators. And then, bumblebees as well, are a similar type of thing. They're some of the most important pollinators that we have. And I spent a summer doing this, just one summer at the beginning, looking for these animals, looking for butterflies, going out in the field. And that was like wild. That blew my mind. All of a sudden, I started seeing butterflies everywhere and started seeing just how like insanely cool they are, insanely colorful, these different, crazy type of behaviors and things that they do. And so from then on, I was fully converted, and that's the end of the story. I'm still a huge charismatic fan of charismatic animals.
Yeah.
But bumblebees and butterflies, man, they're so cool, so cool.
That they are. And I mean, there's more effort than ever to sort of highlight to the public how important pollinators are. We've seen this Cheerios ad campaign. People recognize that pollinators are a big deal. It's something that we need to conserve. And so what can people do? Like in your experience and the knowledge you've gained from your PhD practice, et cetera, what if I leave this broadcast today and I go home, what can I do to help those pollinators, help those butterflies, help those bumblebees?
Yeah. One of the most important things that people can do, is at an individual level in their own backyards even, is pollinator gardens. So bumblebees and butterflies are really feeling the impacts of climate change and habitat loss. And with climate change, one of the big things is that it's extremes in temperature that are impacting these animals. And so when we have heat waves in the summer that last for a week, 2 weeks, this is a really long period of time for a bee or a butterfly to have to withstand, when you consider like the lifespan, which in some cases is only a few weeks.
Yeah.
And so building pollinator gardens that are full of natural and local wildflowers that you would find in the wilderness near you, and also pollinator gardens that have a diversity of structures, things like fallen logs on the ground or leaves from the fall. These different structures, we call them microrefugia or microhabitats in conservation, and these are shelters. Bumblebees will use these to withstand those temperatures, butterflies as well. And so not only are you providing habitat and feeding grounds and resources for these animals, but you're also giving them shelters to hide when things get too hot or too cold or whatever.
One of the things I conducted in the first interview that someone mentioned is that when you rake the leaves in the fall, you can leave a pile of them in some corner of your garden. That'll really help provide a habitat for bees to nest, which is really cool. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's awesome that like a lot of the things that you can do is just being lazy, right? Like leave the tree on the ground. It doesn't matter. Leave the leaves on the ground. It's for the wild. Like it's
interesting, like not just on a local scale, but we're seeing this in national parks, provincial parks too, where instead of, clearing all the brush, instead of, getting rid of all that stuff that sort of looks unsightly, that's a really crucial habitat for a lot of animals, both pollinators and in general. So that's an exciting message to share, I think, with a wide audience. With bees, so you mentioned this pollinator garden thing. So I'm in Toronto. The audience for this will likely come from all over the place. So this advice will differ. Where can I find out what my native wildflowers are? Like, is this in nature guides, city guides? Like, how would you know this? I wouldn't know what supposed to live in my backyard.
Yeah, definitely. And to be fair, my thumbs are not very green, so I wouldn't know. I'm not an expert on it either. But Google is your best friend, right? Toronto is a great example. They have a great pollinator strategy, and so on their website somewhere they have a great list of kind of local wildflowers that they've consulted with experts on. But so Google is your best friend, and so is your local gardening center. If you go to a gardening center near you, they'll probably know kind of what are the local wildflowers, or even a naturalist group near you would probably know as well. So that would be my advice: is use Google to your advantage.
Exactly the answer I was hoping for. Thank you. So, I mean, literally in the background behind you, you have some of these amazing nature photographs, and you're really, really big on sharing these stories visually. So how did you get into photography? Why is it so important to you? Why do you think it's an effective means of talking about nature, climate change, all these things? And you've done it so well. So any insight would be great.
Thank you. It started for me. My grandfather used to order us National Geographic subscriptions.
Nice.
And so our house was always littered with these magazines, always on the breakfast table, on all over the house. And I would grow up just flipping through these and being just, awestruck and absolutely fascinated with the imagery, the visuals, the locations, and of course the animals that are like throughout these magazines, and the stories of them too, and the way these images would tell a story and would inspire and just drive such passion in me and in other people. And I didn't really start photography though until the last year of my undergrad. I was working in the field in Arizona, and we were in the Chiricahua Mountains catching lizards with fishing rods. It was absolutely insanely fun time. And in my spare time, I would photograph butterflies, partly so I could submit them to citizen science program. And then of course, while I was photographing them, it was such a beautiful location, so I had to take photographs of virtually everything else as well. And then the next year, I borrowed an old camera from my parents' house, and I started bringing it when I would go camping and bringing it out on hikes, and I was just able to capture these images of birds and of locations and of big charismatic fauna when I was able to go out to more exciting places like South Africa. And it's just a lot of fun. I really enjoy capturing these moments and capturing these animals in certain behaviors, or in certain just doing their thing, and sharing it with people. Just connects with them a little bit and helps them, I guess, feel some of the passion that I do as well. So I really enjoy it. But.
Your background with National Geographic hits the nail on the head. I mean, when people see these images, when they see videos of things, it promotes that connection in a way that a written story can't. Not entirely by itself. I mean, you can write a great story, you can tell people why it's important, but if you show them why it's important, it's so much more impactful. And so, again, kudos to you for all that you've done with that. I also love this idea of you walking through the mountains with a fishing rod, and like some stranger in the trail passing you, going like, "What?" So science provides a lot of opportunities for some very neat stuff. I think it's really important if you're a budding conservationist, wherever you are in the world, to hone that craft to become a better, photography or video storyteller will only amplify the message that you're trying to get across. So again, good. And you do a really, really good job. If people haven't checked out Peter's Instagram page, it is amazing. We'll link it into the video after the fact, and there's some top-notch stuff there.
Thank you.
One thing that you've been doing lately, which the need for is obvious, we're long past the need for asking questions about that, is really highlight your role being Black in STEM. There's a lot of new groups that are popping up all over the world about this. There's a lot of, whether it's photography or highlighting the need for more diversity in STEM across the board to get rid of that leaky pipeline where Black professionals don't end up in high-end roles, at a university or research institute. So instead of asking why it's important, because it's obvious, why is it important to you? Like, as in your role, taking a leadership role in this new movement, what has that meant to you personally?
Yeah, that's a great, I like how you put that, I like how you phrase that question. Often it's the same question over and over. And I like this is new. And yeah, I think the biggest reason I do it is I feel a responsibility, not just because I'm Black, but because I'm in this position of privilege regardless. This is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about science communication as well, is because a lot of people don't have the opportunity or the abilities or privilege to be able to do science or to be able to go to these exotic places or to carry fishing rods in the Chiricahua Mountain, the mountains of Arizona. And so being able to share why I do that and what I'm doing, I think is part of my responsibility as a scientist. And I think one of the responsibilities that all scientists share is making our field more accessible and making it so it's not such a privileged position. And part of that is increasing the equity in our field and in our institutions and making them more inclusive as well. So yeah, it's something that I've been doing a lot of. I think 2020 was the year that people realized that I was Black in a lot of cases, or at least started to realize what that meant and kind of what struggles Black people go through in ecology and in conservation and in the outdoors in general. And so it's been really great working with organizations and institutions to whatever capacity that they're able to do or whatnot. And I think more than anything as well, and one of the other big reasons that I like to be engaged in this is that I also don't know a lot of Black conservationists or conservation of color or Indigenous conservationists. And so it's awesome for me to be able to work in this space and meet just a whole group of other really exciting and interesting people who share a lot of commonalities with me and share a lot of the struggles and challenges that I might face as well.
That is a beautiful answer, and I want to make sure that anyone who's watching this gets a chance to learn about some of these groups. So I mentioned that there are so many groups. Can you name some of those for people who have heard your story? They're keen to follow up. They're keen to find some of these people that you were able to find through these campaigns, and any individuals. If there's people that jump to mind that you'd like to share that we could highlight, that would be amazing.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think one of the really cool or a couple of the really cool networks that I learned of this summer was Black Girl Outdoor World and Kinfolk. Both of these are really cool programs around the GTA and Toronto area that revolve around kind of getting people who historically were excluded from the outdoors, Black people especially, into the outdoors and introducing them to these things and different activities, whether it's bird watching or fishing or paddleboarding or just camping. And there's some terrific programs there. Terrific groups of people as well. The Canadian Black Scientists Network is a great network for professionals and scientists, for learning about professionals and scientists who are Black, who work in conservation or ecology or evolution or medicine and microbiology, a whole range of fields there as well. So I definitely recommend kind of checking out those different organizations or programs. And again, Google is your best friend too, right?
Yeah. I'm going to, again, bug you for all those details afterwards, and I can link that into the video because people should know about all those. I hadn't heard of those groups, so that's fantastic. Two that jump to mind that I've seen recently, Latino Outdoors and Outdoor Afro are two really, really amazing groups encouraging people to get outside in nature. It's just not something that, again, in images of people walking through national parks, you see a white family. In images of people out, on photography exhibitions in South Africa, you see a white family or olderly white people. And that's You know, that's a shame. So again, thanks for sharing all these really, really fantastic groups. I want to link them in. This is awesome. And kudos to you. Has there been feedback? Like, have you heard from people, whether it's other scientists or young people, about the work that you've done, about your work in this area? Like, has there been, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, that was one of the best things that happened to me this summer. Was somebody just absolutely random. I had a terrible week, and then at the end of the week, just some random person messaged me on Twitter, and they said, "Hey, like I just saw kind of some of the interviews you were doing about the paper that came out, the bumblebees and the climate change." And they were like, "It was amazing for me to see another Black person on TV talking about this." And they were like, "Thank you for for the work you were doing." And that just like floored me. It just made my day.
Wow.
It was completely unsolicited and absolutely just touched me. So and we continued to have a great conversation. And but it was So when these things happen, it really makes your day and realizes kind of what sort of impact you can have just by being in a field, and just by persevering through all the different challenges that might crop up.
Yeah. That is an awesome story. We were talking a little bit before we went live about what's next for you. So, I mean, if I'm watching this, you're in so many different fields, you're doing so much. What is next? What can we expect to see Peter doing in the next 6 months or a year?
Yeah, great question. I'm finishing up my PhD at the moment. Summer 2021 is the estimated end date, and I'm really excited for that. I've had an amazing time in my PhD, amazing time with the different groups that I've worked with. But I'm excited to move on to different things. And since I started graduate school, since I started university, or almost since I started university, I really wanted to work in conservation, to work in conservation management or policy, or somewhere making an impact, making a difference. And so I'm really excited to start applying for jobs, either at government or NGOs. And so shameless plug, if you work at one of these places and you're hiring in the next year, hit me up, let me know. And I promise I'm a hard worker, I swear.
We'll put it out on LinkedIn and more after this broadcast, and we can get those things. I don't think you're gonna have any trouble, Peter. I'm excited to see what you can do in conservation. I can't wait to have more. And I truly, I've been really excited for this interview as one of the kickoff things for the entire project all year long. So thank you for spending some time with me today. I really, really appreciate it. And you're on to some really great stuff. Cannot wait to share all these resources and links and things that you mentioned today with this audience. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate everything you're doing as well in this field. Just your hype and your passion and your ability to highlight people is absolutely incredible. I'm so excited to hear the rest of these conservation stories across the earth.
Well, check it out, Conservation Stories on Instagram, conservationstories.net. This will be there. Many more will be there. And you can see some more people that are almost as cool as Peter over the coming months.